Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Customer Success Leadership Roundtable. I'm Andrew Marks, co-founder and architect of the Success Coaching Training Program, and I'm back with you for our monthly live CS Leadership Roundtable webcast today, talking about the psychology of customer success. This free learning event is brought to you by Success Coaching, the world leader in customer success development, customer success professional development training, with more than 26,000 students from more than 90 countries on our skills development platform. Our programs are available in a variety of formats, from self-paced online learning to virtual instructor-led boot camps. We've got a number of upcoming boot camps that still have seats available, including our level 1 CCSM certification boot camp led by my partner, Aaron Thompson, September 25th through 27th, and an outcome-based selling boot camp also led by Aaron, October 24th through 25th. We've also got a growing number of partners delivering some great content through our platform, Change Management for Customer Success, a skill every customer success manager should possess, led by our longtime strategic partner, Toby Lucic, an expert in change management, is coming up next week, September 18th through 20th. And then data-driven decision-making led by Ed Powers begins September 29th. We also have a bunch of boot camps and workshops in October. Tickets are also available for our fall semester 12-week level 1 and level 2 coaching programs, delivered in partnership with the University of San Francisco Executive Education Certificate Program. This is one of my absolute favorite things that I get to do, spending 12 weeks with up to 25 participants as we cover the key skills to be successful in customer-facing roles. We have a variety of special guests that join us, in-depth conversations about all the topics covered during the program, thought-provoking exercises, and just great conversations help everybody connect the dots between the skills they're learning and how to incorporate them into their day-to-day world. Now, the program launches this week, but it's not too late to enroll. Our first calls don't start until next Thursday. And I believe that Ashley is dropping some links and any coupon codes that we have into chat. Whether it's a self-paced learning, a boot camp, workshop, or a more gradual weekly coaching program, we've got quality customer-focused programs and formats that will suit the needs of anyone and everyone on your staff. So if you or any of your team members are looking to upgrade their customer-facing skills, we've got a program for that. Let's see. So Ashley's already dropped that stuff into chat, and you can find out more about our online learning and instructor-led program workshops at successcoaching.co. Also, if any of you leaders out there are going to be attending the CS 100 at Sundance this year, once again, Success Hacker is the platinum sponsor. And both I and my co-founder, Todd, will be there all 3 days. So if we haven't formally met, make sure to say hello. It is a great event put on by the folks over at Client Success, something that we've been involved with nearly since the beginning of this event. A lot of great speakers, a lot of great content, a lot of great networking, no heavy sales push. You know, it's really a quality event with some real quality time spent with leadership peers. One of my favorite events on the trade show calendar every year. So, and if you're still on the fence of going, DM me on LinkedIn and I can share a discount coupon code, but don't wait too long. I think they're running out of spaces. So for those of you that have not participated in one of these events before, this is a live and unscripted discussion where we dig into a single topic relevant to customer success leadership, regardless of the company that you work for, the scope of your role, or the size of the customers your teams deal with. We aim to pick topics that are going to be practical and useful to you. Now, the schedule for our upcoming events can be found at successcoaching.co. Click on the events tab at the top of the page to find out more. And just as a reminder, our next CS Leadership Roundtable event is scheduled for October 11th, when we'll talk about digital customer success strategy, something everyone in any success model should be looking at, especially these days with everybody needing to do more with less. A few housekeeping items before we get started. This webinar is recorded and we'll be posting a replay along with a transcript on our website early next week. So if you have to leave at the top of the hour, remember we go 15 minutes past the hour, so if you have to leave at the top of the hour, you can watch the replay or read the transcript after the fact. We will be taking questions later on during the webinar, and we encourage that. And we get a lot of questions. So please ask your questions. Don't be shy. Use that Q&A button found at the bottom of your screen to ask your own question, or if you see one that is similar, just upvote that's already there. We answer questions based on the most upvotes first. We are also broadcasting on LinkedIn Live and have somebody monitoring that feed. So if you have questions, please post them, and Tracy will relay them to us. Also, we would appreciate it if you keep all commentary to the chat window and questions to the Q&A window. And if you post a question in the Q&A window, or post a question in the chat window, Ashley will gently remind you to please post in the Q&A window. All right, enough of the logistics. There's a lot of thought leadership out there, along with a lot of theories about how to deliver customer success. In this series, we focus on practical, real-world advice, best practices, techniques, and shared experiences from those working with or leading customer success teams on a daily basis. And to do that, we invite 3 panelists to join me for a roundtable discussion. These are people who are great at their craft, and we ask them to share their experiences and their perspectives. So without further ado, I'd like our panelists to introduce themselves to y'all, talk a bit about who they are and what they do, and let's get started as usual in alphabetical order with Jojo.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jojo. I'm the Vice President of Customer Success at Fourth Down Solutions, which is a platform that caters to primarily the pharmaceutical and life science worlds. My background is actually in psychology and English. However, I've been in the SaaS world for about 10 plus years now, very much so enjoying it and still able to use my psychology and English experience. So I'm really, really happy to be here to talk about this subject, because we absolutely use it, not only with our internal teams, but with our client relationships as well. Thanks again for having me.
Awesome. Thanks, Jojo. Yeah, I don't think people appreciate how much psychology is part of customer success. I mean, it's all about that. There's so much psychology to it. So thank you for making the time. Justyn, good to have you back on the program. You're up.
Thanks, Andrew. It's great to be back. My name is Justyn Harvey. Hi, everyone. I have a couple of different roles at the moment, but both of them are in the field of applied behavior analysis. My experience varies quite a bit, but most of it has always stayed in the realm of psychology and behavioral analysis. I earned my bachelor's degree in psychology, earned my master's in behavior analysis. So everything over the past 10 years, I felt has really aligned with both aspects, psychology and ABA, whether that be if I was as a clinician, operations leader, customer success leader. All of those roles, I think, have played at least my education has played a key aspect of being successful in those roles. And so that's why I really like this topic, and I'm really excited to be here.
Awesome. Hey, 2 for 2 on the psychology majors. We got a topic on psychology. So, we wanted to make sure we had some folks with some background on psychology. So, Justyn, once again, thanks for joining us, and I'm glad you had a good enough experience the first time around, so that you came back and wanted to do this again. And then, of course, last but not least, another returning guest, Sivan.
Yeah, and you're about to get a third psychology major. So
exactly.
Nice to meet you all. My name is Sivan Rinat. I am a senior enterprise customer success manager at Monday.com. I've been in the SaaS space for about 5 or so years, but I studied psychology in college, absolutely loved it. Thought about becoming a therapist, clinician, figuring out, what I wanted to do with it. And it, as I'm sure many of you know and are here to talk more about, I think plays into everything we do within customer success. I've been in the more customer experience support space, so kind of started with more of the written communication, which would love to talk more about how that plays into this conversation. And then also worked in training and enablement of the team, as well as implementation and now enterprise. So very excited for this conversation.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, the written communications scare the crap out of me, right? Because it lacks the context behind the content, right? So always dangerous. I used to coach my teams all the time. If this is a difficult conversation, don't write it in email, please. Pick up the phone and call, right? You need to speak with these people. But anyways, thank you all again for joining us. Now to the topic at hand. In this era of digital transformation and customer-centric business models, unlocking the secrets of customer success is crucial. It's not just about satisfying customers, it's about understanding their psychology, their emotions, their behaviors. By harnessing these insights, you can supercharge customer satisfaction, build loyalty, and drive unstoppable business growth. The human mind is a captivating wonder. It lies at the core of how we drive our business, forge connections with customers, which is huge in customer success, and shape our strategies. And when we unlock this intricate psychological principles at play, we empower ourselves to tailor our approach and cater to every customer's distinct needs, preferences, expectations, perceptions. Discovering the psychology of customer success is paramount in today's dynamic business landscape. Not only does it bolster customer satisfaction, but it also profoundly impacts our team's performance and the level of engagement that our employees embody. So let's dive right in. I'd love to hear from each of you about a career-defining moment, right? Share that pivotal instance where your grasp of customer success psychology played a transformative role in the ultimate outcome of whatever that situation is. Who wants to start with a story?
I'll hop right in.
Oh, go ahead, Jojo.
Okay, Jojo. I heard Jojo first. So
Yeah.
Jojo, you go.
Yeah, I'll hop right in. Again, very passionate about EQ. I pride myself in making that the core of my leadership style. So it not only impacted the relationship I was trying to build with our clients or teach our CSMs to build with our clients, but also how we handle things internally. So when I started with the company here, that was 2 years ago, I'm just celebrating my 2-year anniversary with this company. I came into a pretty tight-knit group. Everybody had been there for a while. And there was, of course, a way of doing things, the way it's always been done, as they say. And I wanted to transform not only some of the processes, goals, but also shift the mindset a little bit. And leading with EQ, you understand that you can't come in and start giving out orders or passing out initiatives because you haven't built a relationship and don't have that dynamic with the team quite yet. So I had to sit back and almost be a student. I had to let the team that was already there teach me about how they're doing things, what their mindset is, what kind of processes they have, if they have any at all, and take away my own experience of KPIs that I'm used to or SOPs that I've created, and just look at things from their perspective, removing my experience and my past processes before. And then once we developed that relationship a bit more, I was able to build trust and give everybody a voice, and they would have a power in making some of the decisions, some of the goals that they set. It would be things that they were passionate about, instead of me saying, this is what's on our map, and this is a task for you and a task for you. We came together and we planned. Again, people decided what their goals were, and they took the charge. And I sat back, and everything, of course, is very intentional with strategy. I sat back and let them have the first word, and I would learn from them. Building that foundation, building that trust really, really helped to improve relationships all around. And now I think that dynamic has trickled not only in our customer success team, but across the entire organization and down to our clients.
Well, change management and finessing change is not something that you are going to achieve through brute force.
Absolutely.
Right? You need to understand. You need to understand, and your folks, your people need to understand that you're there to help them, right? And it's only then where you can like kind of uncover those key things that will help you to put in place the changes that you think are necessary, that and create the narrative for your team members about what's in it for them that they're going to care about. So I love that. I love that approach. That's That's awesome. And I also like the fact that you're talking about this topic, this psychology from your team's perspective, because I'm a huge fan of Sir Richard Branson, who talks about how your customers aren't number one, it's your people who are number one. And if you treat your people as number one, that flows down to your customers. Justyn, what was tell me about your experience.
Yeah, of course, definitely. First, thanks, Jojo, for sharing. That was great to hear. I would say probably at least what I would consider a pivotal moment in my career was probably my first year in the field of customer success. I was working as an individual contributor at the time as a customer success manager. And this had been a few years, like a year or so after I just left the clinical field. I was working as a clinician. And when it'd been about a year into the role, and I had a few accounts under my plate at this time, and I was dealing with a customer who had just gone through some leadership turnover, which can be a really challenging situation, because not only do you have to learn about these new individuals, you now also have to resell the value of your product, which we're doing anyways in almost every conversation, but it's almost like you're working 10 times harder than you had to previously because you now have new individuals on the call. And I went into this call kind of prepared with a slideshow, like what I wanted to present, what I wanted to show. And the CEO gets on the call, and the first 10, 15 minutes was very unpleasant for me, caused a lot of anxiety. There was a lot of screaming, a lot of bad words being used, a lot of just inappropriate language. And this is a very extreme case too. By the way, this isn't something that hopefully isn't happening to everyone every day. But like the first 10, 15 minutes, there was just a lot of frustration in the moment. You could really tell that this person was feeling very overwhelmed at the moment. And a lot of it was being, I guess, directed, maybe not necessarily at me, but at us as a software company at the time. And I thought, okay, how can I, de-escalate the situation? How can I get us into a place where we can actually have an appropriate conversation and actually talk through some of the problems? And I started to realize, I could just take everything that I had learned previously as a clinician and apply it to this situation. And so after he had his chance to vent, I started going into asking questions, why are you feeling this way? Or, why do you perceive the software to behave this way? Or what are the perceptions you're receiving from your team? And to boil a lot of it down, this person was very new to the industry, and it was just very obvious he was very overwhelmed. And I think using that knowledge and experience to my benefit really helped me tailor the rest of the conversation. I scrapped the slideshows and didn't use them at all. And we just kind of talked through understanding the basics of how the industry operated and how things worked. And by the end, he was smiling, he was cracking jokes and everything. So it was a really, really interesting experience to have someone shift from frustrating to very, very happy within an hour time frame, just using some of the tactics I've learned from psychology.
Well, it sounds like your customer felt overwhelmed. They felt out of place. And you, like you said, you applied some of those clinical techniques of trying to kind of peel that back and understand what's the root of this, right? Where is this coming from?
Yeah, exactly.
So Sivan, I want to hear about your experience, but in customer success, and we talked about this on Monday as well. It's almost like sometimes we find ourselves as therapists.
Yeah, absolutely. Which I think is kind of what Justyn was just describing, taking those same skills. And I can think of so many examples that Justyn, we could probably go back and forth. Just that feeling to me, I remember early in my customer success career, that building up, that little bit of, I was able to just turn that person around, or let me pause in my mind. Okay, I'm recognizing why this person is frustrated, angry, upset, disrespectful, whatever that may be. Sometimes people are just disrespectful, and I think that's good to recognize too. But recognizing what it is that's going on with that person. There are a few like smaller examples that I'm now, just in hearing your story, I'm sort of like dying to share, but I think sticking to one big one that felt really pivotal for me in my career, that was a big realization, was actually a little bit rather than customer facing, kind of like internal customer facing. So in a managerial role that I was in a few years ago, I had a new direct report who was moved to report to me, and this person hadn't been moved around a few managers and kind of saw the move as, is it remedial? Am I not performing well? And that's why I got moved again. Was not exactly thrilled to be in the situation that we were in. And I remember coming in, we had a really good relationship as colleagues beforehand. And so the first meeting we had, it sort of threw me how this person seemed not excited to work together. And something that struck me that I remember thinking, I think this is something I learned, senior year of college or something like that, was the word resistance, psychological resistance. And I think maybe there's some Freud in there, kind of like originating, whether or not you believe in everything that Freud said. I don't totally, but it definitely struck me as, okay, this person showed up late to the meeting, is on Zoom, but sitting on their floor. I've never seen them sit on the floor in a meeting before. Their posture, the eye contact, all these nonverbal cues telling me, and the behavior showing me this person is resistant to what we're trying to do here, which I think really comes up with therapists, right? Building that rapport can be really challenging. There are a lot of reasons why people don't connect at first. And once I realized that, once I recognized, okay, there's resistance here, I was able to think about, what is motivating this person? What do they need out of this? What might be causing the feelings that they're having? Address it a little bit head on, kind of addressing, this is not remedial. I'm here for you. I want to work well with you. Here's how I want to help. And then also building trust over time, that it ended up completely turning around. So that was sort of this realization of, whoa, I'm hearing things from my psychology classes and these concepts right in front of me, right in front of my eyes.
Interesting. Psychological resistance. Yeah, I can't. I'm trying to picture getting on a call with a direct report and finding them sitting, cross-legged on the floor, right, and like almost in an act of defiance, like they're camped out in front of a building protesting on a college campus. So that actually is a great segue to my next question. What are some of the psychological principles that you all believe play the most critical roles in successful customer interaction, and why do you consider those so vital? And I'm talking about, like, for example, I'm thinking, the first one that pops in my head is a self-awareness. Right. So whether it's principles with the customer or with the customer facing individual, self-awareness is super important when you have, like, for example, Justyn, you didn't get sucked into this situation where you've got this customer that's pissed off and yelling and using, 4-letter words and get riled up. You had enough self-awareness and self-control, to kind of not go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah. And I would say, had I not had previous experience as a clinician, and I'm not saying, go out and do work as a clinician by any means, that's not what I'm saying, but had I not had that experience, I don't think I would have handled the situation the same way, just because I am very prone to high anxiety. I'm very prone to just when someone is, I'm a very empathetic person. And so when someone is feeling an emotion, it almost kind of takes over my body, and I can feel it too. It's a really odd sensation to have sometimes. And in those moments, if you're not, as you're saying, Andrew, if you're not self-aware, you could potentially react to the same manner that person is talking to you. And at that point, one, you're not only hurting your own kind of career and your job placement, but, it's not always a good look for someone to be presenting that way. I mean, it just turns into an argument, a battle, and it doesn't really solve any actual problems, which is kind of what we are here to do as customer success individuals. I guess to kind of bounce off of that, and I'm sorry, Jojo and Sivan, I'm not trying to just jump in and take over. But kind of bouncing off of that, I would say things that I find important are empathy, active listening, and I would really say being clear and objective in the way you communicate. Communication is very important when talking to customers.
Yeah. And I mean, I certainly agree with self-awareness, and that means being critical of yourself as well. I know that I recorded a meeting with one of my direct reports. And then when I watched it back, I looked angry the entire time. And I knew that that was something that I had to work on to make sure that when I am meeting with my team, a client, anybody, I don't look like that. Maybe that's just my natural state. However, right, situational, I have to actively work on that. And asking for feedback from colleagues that you trust and being open to that feedback. I know I wasn't always the best at receiving feedback. However, hearing those things from somebody that I trusted and knew my intentions, it gave me a different perspective because now I understand how people are viewing me. So now if I'm speaking to somebody or writing an email or on a meeting, I can watch for those certain things that naturally my body tends to goes back to and curb them just a little bit. That's absolutely important. And I agree with the communication piece. Also, just getting to know whoever you're working with, right? Because one leadership style might not be effective across the board, or one way you manage your client relationships might not be effective with all of the clients across the board. While this style might work with one of your clients, maybe another one of your clients or another one of your team members needs more structure, more details, clear explanations. However that looks like for each individual person, we have to be able to not only understand what those individual needs are, but how we adapt to provide them with those essentially needs that they have.
Well, now you don't need to be a clinician to be self-aware, exhibit self-control, or ask good questions, right? But those three things right there will typically diffuse a situation and also allow you to control your emotions, even when their emotions are, going off the rails. So you all understand the psychology of customers and customer influence. How well, how does that psychology, those psychological aspects of managing customers influence the approach that your teams take in creating your customer success strategy?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think, and one of the questions in the Q&A kind of goes back to this, employing active listening techniques. I think there's a lot we can learn from a customer by active listening. And when I say active listening, what I really mean by that is paying attention to what the customer is actually saying and forming your questions based off of what they're asking. I think from the previous example I gave, had I stuck with my slides and what I had wanted to present to the customer, it would have kind of been one, not only frustrating to the customer, but it would have also probably hindered the relationship that formed later because I was not listening to that customer. And you can get on the phone, you can, get on a call like this and you can be listening, right? You can be listening in the background. You can be really just kind of going in one ear and out the other. Active listening is really taking an active stance and listening to every word that your customer is saying and not interrupting or not stepping in until they give you the opportunity to do so, especially in high emotional situations, because a customer is going to come to you with some sort of emotion that they're going to want to vent in some way. And again, I'm not saying this is appropriate. I feel like if you're going to every call like this, maybe you do need a therapist or a clinician. But if you do run into those situations, let the customer talk. You can get so much information from them just by listening to what they have to say and paying attention to some words, paying attention to the language that they're using will really play a key role in and understanding their emotions and how they feel about a certain situation, and ultimately their motivation. Why are they wanting to use the software in the first place? Why are they coming to you for help and a solution? And that can help form your conversation by asking additional how and why questions to really further get a deeper understanding from, just because from my experience, customers are not going to come to you and tell you exactly what they need. They're going to come to you and say one thing. And then if you ask the right questions, you're ultimately going to get to that final answer in which they give you the actual reason why they're frustrated or upset or what they really need help with.
I think that's so huge. The piece around motivation plays a lot into what we do formally and informally. And I see in the chat the comment about getting curious about someone's frustrations and how effective that can be. It's sort of, in customer success, we talk a lot about empathy and about curiosity. And we might not say curiosity thinking of it as something psychological, but that we're really talking about motivation, both in terms of almost from a sales perspective too, of what value is this going to bring to someone, as well as if I'm trying to get a team to adopt or even put me in contact with senior leadership, right? Well, what does senior leadership care about? What motivates them? Or even, and Justyn, to your point, right? If a customer is in crisis, a customer, especially, these days in tech, the company is going through changes, maybe they've been acquired. My contact might not be focused on what I'm focused on. They might not be focused on, well, how can we get everyone to adopt this tool? If people are worried about, I'm getting a new manager, or is the team changing? Am I going to have a job, right? There's so much change happening. So understanding their motivation when we think about, for example, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that I think is one of those like very core things that people know of, even if you didn't study psychology. When you think about that basis of just kind of like this, what you need for survival versus when you get higher and higher up the pyramid. And so when we think about, when we're all the way up here to how can I make sure that you're getting the most value out of what you purchased? And they're just thinking about how can I make sure I have a job, or how can I make sure my team has what they need, or we're spending less money. At least to them, that's what's more core. Maybe not for everybody. So hopefully people see your tool or your service as core. But understanding their motivation and what is pushing them is so huge in order to form those relationships.
Well, that's the what's in it for me, right? The what's in it for me from your individual end users all the way up to your key stakeholders, right? It's really understanding that. It's really understanding their perspective, really empathizing with everybody in that hierarchy. What's in it for them?
Yeah.
I would say, I have conversations all the time with people about how do I drive adoption? Like, well, you need to figure out what's in it for them.
Exactly.
Right? It's not about teaching them how to use your product. It's about how is what this new thing, this new product or service, how's that going to affect me? About me, right?
Exactly. And one thing that I just wanted to add to that really quick, Andrew, I think that goes both ways. It's, as a leader, it's not just for your customers, for your employees too. What's in it for them to have these conversations? What's in it for them to learn these tactics that you're trying to teach them, understand their motivation, and you will get so much farther with ensuring that clients are really successful. Because if your employees are successful, so are your customers.
And I
Andrew,
think
God.
Sorry about that. Yes. I think keeping those interactions and relationships genuine also helps, right? Because when those clients or your team members come to you and they have an obvious reason why they're frustrated or they're not reaching what they should be reaching, not always do we have the insight into exactly, like you said, what is going on behind the scenes, right? Is their job in danger? Are they facing internal changes? Maybe something is going on in their personal life. Some of us have really great client relationships where they do give us a little bit of insight into those things. But when you're starting fresh, you don't always have that insight. So I think giving the space for genuine conversations to come out, if the client is frustrated, you can be frustrated as well. You can share that empathy and say, I understand where you're coming from. Of course, there should be an action plan behind it, But sometimes when we're frustrated, just like when your friends come to you, sometimes they want to vent. Sometimes they need an ear. And we have to give them that space and not be robotic and say, okay, well, you're frustrated. Here's X, Y, and Z. We're going to get it solved and everything is going to be great. Sit back and let that genuine side come out a little bit to be in the moment, but then help them, right? Just like we would with a friend, because at the very core, it is that relationship that's important and the driving factor.
Well, this kind of takes us back to the active listening thing. Okay. Because I tell you, when I'm talking to my daughter, my 14-year-old daughter, who is sometimes glued to her device, and I'm having a conversation with her, and as soon as she puts that phone up in front of her face, the conversation's over because she's not listening to me, right? So that's where active listening really plays a huge role in establishing connections with others, whether it's your customer, whether it's your internal peers, whether it's your kids, your spouse, your significant, whatever, right? Putting the phone down, turning off the email, turning off Slack, sitting down and listening to what people have to say. And then it's not just good enough to listen to what they're saying, right? A key part of active listening, and it's something we teach. And Justyn, I heard some of it coming out from our level 1 that you took. You need to take what you heard and you need to restate it back to the person that is speaking to you in your own words. Okay, what that does is it helps you. It ensures that you understand what the person is saying, but probably more importantly, it demonstrates to the person who's speaking that you are actually listening to them. And if somebody feels like they're being listened to, they're going to probably share more. Right. So it sounds like that's what happened, Justyn, in your example, and how you were able to kind of peel things back and figure out, okay, this person is new to this role. They're new to this function. They're new into this realm. They feel completely overwhelmed and out of place. Right. It was because you were listening and that person recognized, and you asked good questions and you likely restated what you had heard. And it prompted this individual to spend, to share even more with you, which is what we want people to do. And then from that we get, as Chris Voss puts it, and those that have been on this program or have listened in this program before, I'm a huge fan of Chris Voss and his Never Split the Difference book, which is about negotiation, but it's 100% applicable in customer success. You get those black swans. You start hearing things that you didn't expect. Hearing things, you get to discover the things you didn't know. And so that relationship building piece is so powerful, and active listening is the cornerstone to that.
Andrew, you mentioned, where does this come into play formally in our teams? Where do we put this into practice? Because I think a lot of us, people talk all the time about empathy in customer success, and that happens. Jojo, you mentioned even in our personal lives. Yeah, I think customer success managers very often are also the friends who people are coming to vent or for validation. And so, but I think in terms of how we do it, maybe a little bit more formally, it happens all the time. Our team is looking a lot at risk mitigation these days. Identifying risks early as well. And that comes from having those conversations, sometimes even maybe more honestly than I would like. I've I think more than once been the first person that a point of contact at the client organization has told that they are looking to leave their job before they've told anyone else at their company, right? But knowing that early, and how we can, from a risk mitigation perspective, how we can use that information to jump in and be smart about it and have that good documentation. I think it also comes into play when we talk about motivation. Depending on how you're doing business reviews, EBRs, QBRs, hopefully you're also looking at goals, right? Understanding what the key KPIs, OKRs, goals of who you're speaking to, what those goals really are. So you're doing that active listening to understand it, but you're also understanding their motivation in order to plan out your partnership and your strategy with this client. So all of those kind of like plays or actions that I think are very, very important within customer success that we do really formally. One other that comes into play that I know I've been seeing on LinkedIn a lot, and also within our own organization is coming up a lot around CSQLs, qualified leads for sales. And so when it comes to working with colleagues in other teams, understanding account managers' motivations, understanding products motivation, understanding marketing's motivation, so that not to manipulate them so that they'll do what benefits me, but so that I can work really well with them. If I know that sales has certain KPIs that's going to impact what they care about, if I can help with that and work towards that, then I'll better that partnership. If I know what product really, really cares about, then the way that I frame my feedback to them is going to be more strategic and smarter. So I think we do it all the time.
You are manipulating, but you're not. But you're not doing it. There's nothing wrong with it.
Right.
You're not doing it from a point of trying to deceive anybody. We actually teach that in one of our in our level 2 course. We talk about in 211 CCSM 211. We talk about how you should be applying some of the exact same strategies that you apply to better understand the perspectives of your customers with your internal teams. Right? It is manipulation, but it's manipulation so that we can have a better relationship.
Right.
Right. So help me, help you, help me. And there's nothing wrong with that. When I became aware, when I became self-aware, way back in my career, that the sales team wasn't just tossing crap over the wall at me, because maliciously, that they had motivations, that they were very coin operated, which is what we want. They were hunters. That's what we paid them for. When I came to grips with that, my relationship with the sales team dramatically improved.
Yeah. I've had a similar experience.
Yeah. It's not a bad thing. Why don't we get where it's almost a quarter till the top of the hour. We got about half an hour left here. Why don't we get to some of these questions? Let's see. Our first question comes from anonymous attendee. Well, apparently anonymous attendee asked a number of questions today. So whoever this anonymous attendee is, thank you for the question. What are your best strategies for? I'm just going to go with it. No, they got replaced. They got replaced at the top. What are your best strategies for re-engaging executive sponsors when a customer has been a customer for a while that hasn't been involved for a while or are brand new? We're having issues with our tactical resources giving us access to our more strategic resources to have a strategic conversation that we must have. And Sivan, it looks like you wanted to jump in on this first.
Yeah. And I'm curious if others have thoughts on this too. One thing that came to mind with these challenging conversations, again, when thinking about psychology and how we can learn from it here, that social proof, I think, goes a really long way with executive sponsors. I think that maybe going back to, again, their motivation, right? They tend to be busy. They tend to be, especially in larger organizations, this is not their only vendor, provider, tool, whatever it may be, right? And so they really want to know how it can benefit them. And one of the things that I think when they don't already know the tool well or trust it, which at least for me, that's come up when someone's been a customer for a long time, but maybe the executive sponsors aren't as engaged, is this has worked well for others. Whether that's, may not be, hey, your competitor uses this. It may not be that blunt or direct, but this has worked well for other people. And here's why. And I think that's not just me at this, not just Sivan saying this. This is other people. There's that social proof. People really, I think, respond to that as to why they should care.
I'd like to follow up with that. Sivan, I think you made some really good points, motivation. One tactic that I've used in the past, and it only works if you have recorded phone calls of previous conversations, but usually disengagement occurs rather early. And it's usually because you're not providing something that they're looking for. And so if you have access to previously recorded videos, go back and watch them. See, did this executive person say something within a call that maybe I missed? Maybe they requested additional follow-up and I never actually responded. Or, maybe they were, feeling a certain way and I never responded or never, acknowledged it. If you go back and use previous resources and understand again where that additional motivation comes from and what they're looking for, that could help re-engage that executive sponsor that you're looking for. I think Sivan also makes a really good point in that also try to be empathetic, put yourself in that person's shoes. People are very busy today. I think Andrew made this point at the very beginning. We're all trying to do more with less. And I think that plays a key role when you have 20, I think I read an article somewhere, people have between 20 and 30 different vendors that they're speaking with. That's a lot. And if everyone's trying to have a monthly call, that's taking up most of your schedule already. And most executives don't want to do that. They want to spend their time looking and reviewing operations and helping manage the business overall.
Yeah. And I'll add just grasping a better understanding of the client, their business, and what their overarching goals are. Has something changed? Is there a shift in the market? Are they coming with a new product? Are they facing a new launch? All of those things can impact things. If the goals have shifted and they no longer find value in the platform, then you need to be able to proactively solve their new issues, right? Their new needs. So if you're doing your market research, you can kind of anticipate and accelerate on their needs, being able to proactively solve needs that maybe they don't even realize that they're going to have in the very, very near future. Being that added benefit, being that trusted advisor, especially during those critical times, can really, really re-engage clients.
Well, as both Sivan and Justyn mentioned, you got senior executives that are looking a mile wide and about an inch deep, right? They've got a lot of stuff on their plate, 100%. So you need to go into this with that perspective. And Jojo, you mentioned, have you successfully connected the dots between what you're doing and how it plays a role in the company's objectives? Okay, the companies do not spend money just to spend money. So I think you need to go back, anonymous attendee, that really is your name. I think you need to go back and figure out, okay, did we do a good job connecting the dots between the value that we're bringing for what we do and how that plays a part in the company achieving their overarching business objective? Because when you're able to connect those dots, that can be incredibly powerful. But once again, that assumes that you got to a point of value, and you may have gotten to a point of value, but did you clearly demonstrate that value and disseminate that value to the people who need to hear it? Right. So, I mean, it's from at least from my experience, it's going to be some work for you to go back and re-engage. But you also want to be looking forward and answering those questions. Are we getting to a point of value? Are we delivering value? Are we demonstrating that value? Are we disseminating that value to the people that need to hear it? And then are we connecting the value that our tactical piece of whatever we're doing, are one of 30 applications that a company is using? Have we very clearly connected the dots between what we have and how it's playing a role in that company achieving some overarching business objective? Because they are not spending money just to spend money. They are spending money with you because they're trying to achieve something. And that takes some digging. That is not always apparent right out of the gate. But there's somebody in that management chain that said, yeah, that's a good idea to go with this company because it's going to help us do this. Thank you, anonymous attendee. Sivan, could you hit the done button on that question? We'll move on to the next one. Kaylin? I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, Colin. Apologies if I'm not. But thank you for joining us and thanks for the question. Kaylin says, I love what we have gone over for calls via Zoom, Google, etc. we aren't able to see our clients' faces or hear their tone via email. What are some tactics for reading into your clients' emails that help to better communicate? And that's right there. That's dangerous right there, reading into it. Right, Jojo? I think you wanted to jump in on this one.
Yes. So I am one of those people that is very guilty of reading probably too far into emails. Why didn't they use an exclamation point? Am I using too many exclamation points, right? All of these certain things that kind of fire off in your head while you're either typing email or reading an email. I think understanding your client. So to understand your client, more than likely, you will need a couple of those Zoom, Google calls, those face-to-face over the internet interactions, so you can pick up on their social cues, establishing that kind of baseline. If you know this is just the way they write emails, right? Maybe they don't use punctuation at all, or quite the opposite. If they're always using exclamation points and they send you an email that has none, and it sounds a little bit angry if your gut says so. If it's efficient and if it's a sensitive topic, have those conversations via a call where you can watch the tone, or at least hear the tone, watch those nonverbal cues. For everyday emails, understanding how your client or the person that you're interacting with, typically emails is a big thing, right? Because sometimes people just don't put as much emphasis as we tend to do into crafting emails. So what they might be saying to you might not be upset or stressed out. It's just a quick email that they're firing off. I think asking the right questions, getting clarity. If an email is vague, know what questions to ask and make those emails really efficient. So instead of going back and forth and asking one email or one question an email, put together a cohesive paragraph that is going to kind of address most things if the topic is something that you can discuss via email. And now we have so many great tools that will help us with crafting those emails. Of course, those are things that we want to leverage, however, still keeping things personal and still maintaining that genuine bond that you've built with your client.
Now, if for some reason, though, you just absolutely can't get them on the phone, maybe it's a company policy, maybe it's infrastructure, maybe you're in a call center halfway around the world and the time doesn't sync up. Can you just ask them? Can you ask them questions via email about their emotional state? Essentially, that sounds like it's frustrating to you, or you sound angry. Help me understand. I mean, does that work?
I think it can, depending on how sensitive you approach it and what the relationship is. If I'm just meeting Andrew for the first time, my first email to him, I'm not sure if it should be like, hey, are you upset with me, right? Again, that self-awareness, removing our judgments and our experiences out of it and reading that email just pure as it is, and ask for a colleague's help. Maybe they can give you a different perspective too. Admittedly, I do like to do a lot of research. So maybe a quick LinkedIn search of this person to see maybe possibly any of their posts or things they've written in the past, if that's just their unique style, or is there a reason they should be upset? If they're coming to you and saying things aren't working, the platform's not working as intended, or they're not finding value, then there's probably a reason why the email sounds a little bit less than thrilled. So assessing the situation as a whole, if it's a Friday morning and there's no possible scenario that happened in the last couple of days that something might have happened to where they are upset with you, I would probably take a little bit of a step back, walk away from the email and read it with a clear head. But if you have an inkling, there is an appropriate time to ask if there's something else that you should be helping with or another issue that needs to be resolved.
So if you get an all caps email from your customer, but you go to their LinkedIn profile and everything in their LinkedIn profile is all caps, you're probably okay.
They just have a broken keyboard.
And that has happened.
Really?
That has absolutely happened.
Wow. Okay. All right. But at the end of the day, you just gotta do everything you can to get people, even if it's once on a call, on a Google Meet, on a Zoom, just at least. And if you have challenging situations that you're trying to deal with, the worst thing that you can do is relegated to email. Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for that question, Kaylin. And thank you for dismissing that. All right. Our next question comes from yet another anonymous attendee. A lot of times when we meet our clients over a virtual call, they are so friendly and communicative, but I've experienced that at times they do not reply to emails, but will reach out only when they need any help. Yeah. Justyn, you looks like you want to jump in on this one.
Yeah, my response is just you in a sense answered your own question. Everyone likes to communicate in a different format, especially in today where we're going to deal with people who prefer phone communication or prefer text communication. Maybe they prefer emails or video calls. If your client is telling you, whether directly or indirectly, that they only like, virtual calls like this, then make it a point to schedule calls like that with them so that if you do have questions, you can have those ready to go during that call. And you won't have to worry about whether they're answering your emails or not. I think it's one of those things about really paying attention to understanding who your customer is and responding to them the way that they want to be responded to, and not making them fit in the way that you want to communicate and be represented. I think it's very important to make sure that you be customer-centric in those approaches.
Well, you need to meet your customer where they're at.
Right.
And a great practice is just to ask them, how would you prefer we communicate?
Yeah. Be direct about it.
Yeah. And just ask, say, how I want to make this as frictionless as possible for you. And I've mentioned this before. I have one chief customer officer, and I can send her an email, but she could take days to respond. But if I text her, she will respond immediately, even if she's sitting in a board meeting. Right. And I know that because I asked her, and I said, how would you like to communicate? She said, well, if it's something complicated, send me an email and then send me a text and say, either direct me to email. If it's something simple, just send me a text. Okay. I meet you that way.
I think the other impact of asking them directly, like you were both just saying, is then when you go forward with the way that you talked about and agreed upon, you've kind of made an implicit agreement. And so they're more likely to follow through on the response. For example, anonymous attendee, I think as much as meeting people where they're at and kind of like taking it as a hint that they prefer a call is super important and really, really fantastic advice. I think what you also might be implying is they're not really following through necessarily. And I've had those clients where we have great rapport and they're excited during the call and they say, yes, good idea. We're going to do that. We're going to do that. And then I summarize it in an email, 0, and I don't hear from them until the next monthly call. So the follow through isn't necessarily there until they need something from me. So I think so important what Justyn and Andrew were just saying about meet them where they're at. And I think you can also follow that up with, if you have this agreement of, I think that's a type of client who, if I said to them, do you want to schedule more calls? They might say, no, email is good. I will respond to your emails, right? So getting them to kind of agree to whatever it is that they prefer so that they actually follow through with that action and not just, you're not forcing them to be there. They're opting in.
Yeah, meet them where they're at. And just because they're not responding to you doesn't mean there's a problem. Once again, you're one of many things. You are one piece of a very complex puzzle that they're dealing with at work.
Yeah. I also, if I can add on, I'm just thinking more and more about a couple of customers where I've had this feeling of amazing, engaging call live, and then not a lot of follow through outside of the calls. And I think one thing that has worked recently with one of these customers is a little bit appealing to their pride. And so framing it as, so for example, in that instance, it's really siloed to only these 1 or 2 contacts who don't follow through with agreements we've made about introducing us to other people or bringing other people into the conversation. And when we sort of get there, it's actually, never mind, they're not ready for it. They're not ready for the tool. And so more recently, I've kind of taken the approach of appealing to, you understand the value here. You really get it. You are such a great partner. Let's expand that. Let's not put this all on your shoulders. Let's make sure that other people see all the work you've done, right? So kind of like appealing to what they've accomplished, appealing to their pride to get them to follow through on what actually we need them to do, whatever the reason may be that they're not following through. So I've found that to be working recently as well.
We refer to that as playing the ego card.
Yeah.
And that's what
exactly.
you're doing, right? And by the way, for that previous question about getting traction with executive sponsors and not getting the people lower in the totem pole to get access to executive sponsors, play the ego card with them as well. We've demonstrated and delivered all this value. We've connected the dots between what we're doing and how it's affecting your company's operational, your company's operations. Why wouldn't you want to elevate yourself within the eyes of the executives, the executive sponsors? Let me help you with that messaging, and we don't need to lead that charge. We want you to lead that charge, because if we're successful in making you look like the smartest person within these four walls, that's good for you. That's good for us. Huge playing the ego card there. Awesome. Anonymous attendee, thank you for the question. Justyn, if you could get done on that. Julia, and like I said before, folks, we're going to keep going here for probably another 10 minutes, so we'll get through as many of these questions as possible. Julia asks, what are the best methods to manage angry customers who consider themselves superior to you in knowledge, personal, professional, considers themselves superior to you in knowledge in a personal, professional way, and is frustrated with product for whatever reason? Jojo, have you want to jump in on this? So you dealt with these types of folks?
Yes. And, I think dealing with it firsthand, first of all, that's a pretty tough burden to carry by yourself. So I really hope there's a leader or somebody internally that can help you there as well. It truly is a mindset shift on the client's end. They have to see you as that trusted advisor and partner and look at the relationship as a partnership, right? They need you to be successful. You need them to be successful. The best way, and it does take a bit of time, but it's not impossible to shift that mindset. And we talked a little bit about manipulation earlier. Now, this isn't manipulating them, it's just manipulating the situation. So if they are frustrated with the platform, more than likely there's a reason. Either something is not working as they were maybe previously promised, they don't understand the best practices, they're not leveraging the platform as intended. All of these factors can play into the dynamic that is happening in the relationship now. I would ask very specific questions of what exactly is not working in the platform, and getting on a call, sometimes even doing a screen share to see exactly what that person is doing correctly or incorrectly, because until you see, you won't know if it's user error or platform error. And providing guidance around best practices, how they can leverage the platform to get better results, and just, again, being the trusted advisor. If they're able to trust you and you can fix their issues, that dynamic will start to shift a little bit, and it's almost like a power dynamic, right? They have their own pressures, you have your own pressures, but it has to come together, because without one another, you're not going to be successful. And I like that we touched on the ego thing, because that's also going to benefit here. Help them get a quick win in front of either their stakeholders, their team, be that resource that they can come to for help with problem solving, because it could just be either the platform's not working, or maybe they're in a space of being overwhelmed, and you can potentially be a resolution there.
I'm going to throw something out here that might not be popular, but quite frankly, they may be superior in knowledge to you. They may be superior in knowledge to you within their own realm. They know their business better than you do. And to your point, Jojo, as you begin, the way that you create that trusted advisor status is for you to better understand their business and how your offering plays a role in them achieving what they're trying to achieve. with your offering and therefore achieve whatever company objectives they. So there may be, in their mind, there is likely a lot of truth to that.
Where they're not superior to you is something that you can offer them. And Jojo, to your point about a quick win, if there is a quick win that you can share with them, get something fixed, give them access to something that without you, they would never have access to, because you are a good success manager. And so you are the one who can connect them with product or share their feedback. You are the one who can get them certain answers. Even if, let's say, for example, it's related to API functionality that's very technical, that maybe they have studied this and know it better than you, then owning that is okay, I think. And that comes with confidence too. I think, especially when I used to train new hires, and I think a lot of new hires in the first couple of months would feel like, well, I don't know because I'm new. Sometimes you don't know just because you don't know, and you could be years into the role and still not know. And all that changes is your confidence in saying, I don't know, but I'm going to find out, or I don't know, but I can still help, and understanding where your role is and how you can help. So I think that it is important for the individual contributor. I think for also managers on the call, this is super important to be supporting your team through it. That being client facing, being customer success managers means that we're opening ourselves up to all kinds of personalities, all kinds of treatment, respectful and disrespectful in many ways. And so as managers, supporting your teams through that experience and being able to help your reports with their confidence around this kind of thing, I think is also really, really important.
Awesome. Jojo. Julia, thank you. Our next question comes from, yet again, anonymous attendee. How would you approach a customer wanting to churn? What are the key questions to ask to trigger an honest answer to dive into the real reasons and what's pushing them to leave versus an easy opt out? That's always a tough one. I've been in situations where customers have churned and they wouldn't tell us the honest reason until we got a third party to reach out to them and have a conversation with them.
I like framing it with, a lot of the time we say, well, what's wrong? What's not working? What goal are you not achieving? But also a way to present that question is, what seems harder than it should? And that kind of gets the door open for more information and more of a conversation rather than just an answer to one question.
This is going back to what I was talking about earlier. This is why connecting the dots between their desired outcomes, what they're trying to achieve, or that value they're trying to achieve, and how it plays into their overarching company objectives is super important. Right?
I think this is also one of those times when we're lucky that we're not sales in a way, because when you're a customer success manager and you're not always focused on the commercial aspect, hopefully you have a relationship where you can be having this conversation in a different type of way that's not just financially motivated or financially focused. And so even though that is incredibly important, and I think there can be a great partnership when it comes to the churn conversation with sales, and should be, but being able to understand and ask what has changed. Is this coming from a money perspective, or is there something else going on? Do you think is this a long-term change where you're never going to need it, or has something changed right now? Right. Just asking those questions that can really, because I care and because I want to make sure that you're getting value out of whatever it is that you're using. Maybe even if it comes down to it, maybe it's asking questions in a way that is coming from, because I want to be able to share that feedback. I want to understand, was this product related? Was this company change related? So was the product missing something that you needed? Did something change within your organization's needs? Anything like that. And I think you get a lot of answers when you identify product related versus company change.
But quite frankly, unless it's one of those watermelon accounts, right, which exist in every portfolio, right, green on the outside, red on the inside. If you've been doing your job, if you've been paying attention, you should have an idea. Right? This shouldn't be that unexpected. Once again, every once in a while, you may have one of those. But you should have a good sense
That's
of
what I
what's
was
happening, right?
That's what I was going to say, Andrew.
Yeah.
I think if someone is coming to you and telling you that they don't want to use your product, they most likely decided that months ago.
Yep.
And it's already too late. I would say from my perspective, if you're trying to chase an account or a customer who has already told you they're churning, unfortunately, it's probably a bit of wasting money and resources, because that should have been identified a long time ago through that relationship building. I think all the time that we've spent talking about building those relationships and ensuring that you're understanding customer motivation, all of those are antecedent tactics to ensure the customer doesn't churn, and really using active listening to understand what your customer wants and needs is a really good way to understand what is going to eventually drive them to churn and leave if we don't meet those expectations and needs.
Awesome. Thanks. Let's get to another one here. We only got another minute left. Julie, thank you for hanging out here with us past the hour. Julie asked, what tips can you share that can make an immediate positive impact with a disgruntled customer who is upset due to constant changes of our internal contacts?
That's a hard one. I know from my perspective as a customer, and I've had to deal with the changes in contacts. It's frustrating.
Incredibly frustrating.
But I would say if you can encourage your team members to research that customer before they go into calls and conversations, it's going to be a much easier approach with that customer because they're going to see that your team is taking the time to truly understand them as an individual organization, as an individual customer. There's too many times that I've seen new customer success managers go onto a call asking the same questions that the customer just answered 2 to 3 months ago when they got another new customer success manager. And that can be really frustrating. And it doesn't make for a great customer experience either. And ultimately, as your question states, it's going to cause the customer to be disgruntled.
It's not could be, it is really frustrating.
Yeah.
And I would also look inwards and say, why do we keep changing contacts?
Right.
You know, why does this, is it just, I mean, it's one thing if it happens once, you know, maybe even once a year, but if it's happening, when you say constant, it sounds like it's happening a lot more frequently. If it's happening that frequently, then I think you're leading, either you as leadership or your leadership team needs to take a step back and say, why are we doing this? Because it's really screwing the customer journey up.
And if that is happening constantly, then having a process in place for it, making sure that anyone who is involved knows what they can communicate to the customer. So having almost an explanation for the customer of why this is happening, figuring out what is appropriate to share and what is too much information, but knowing what information to share with them so that at least they feel like they understand and have a sense of, okay, this isn't just going to happen again in 2 months. And also having a process internally for handovers so that a new person coming in can honestly say, I've been given background, I've studied up, I've learned what I can learn. I still do have a few more questions for you, but I've done my work on my end. Oh,
you absolutely have to have a playbook on how you're going to approach this. You can't just walk into that.
Yeah.
You can't just walk into that cold.
And I will say, when auditing the why, is the client disgruntled because there is so many changes with their contact, or are they disgruntled, which is causing the changes with their contacts? Certainly looking at that too is going to help to understand that dynamic.
Awesome. All right. Well, we're at the end of our time that we have for today. I think it was a great conversation, but it's not what I think. It's not what we think. It's what all of you think. So please let us know by posting your feedback on LinkedIn and tagging either myself, our guests, or Success Coaching. I want to thank all of you, all my guests, for spending the time with us and for the ideas, thoughts, insights, and best practices that you shared. One final note, great CS leaders know that they don't have all the answers, but they know where to get them. That's why we created the CS Leadership Roundtable, to harness the knowledge and experience of the community to help improve everyone. We hope to see you once again at our next event on October 11th, where we're going to be talking about digital customer success, something we all should be thinking about. Until then, make sure to make space for yourself and your mindset every single day, and have a great rest of your day, week, and month, everybody. See you soon.